I still remember the smell of that morning with a clarity that almost physically hurts. It's funny how certain scents can transport you back to a moment you'd rather forget, isn't it? Coffee, the kind that's been sitting in the pot just a touch too long, developing that slightly bitter edge. Burnt toast, because I'd gotten distracted scrolling through my phone while waiting for it to pop. And underneath it all, the faint, expensive scent of my husband's cologne lingering in the air like a ghost of intimacy. It was just another Tuesday. September, I think. The leaves were just starting to turn that particular shade of amber that makes you feel nostalgic for something you can't quite name. At least, that's what I thought it was. Just another ordinary Tuesday in a life I'd built carefully, brick by brick, over more than a decade. I woke up before him that morning, like I always did. It was my ritual, my small act of self-preservation in a marriage that had become so intertwined I sometimes forgot where I ended and we began. I liked having those quiet 15 minutes, just me, my coffee in the oversized mug he'd bought me for our 5th anniversary, and my thoughts before the house came alive with the familiar rhythms of our shared life. The routine was sacred to me. I'd shuffle to the kitchen in my worn slippers, the ones with the hole forming near the left toe that I kept meaning to replace. I'd start the coffee maker, listening to that comforting gurgle and hiss as it came to life. I'd stand by the window and watch the neighborhood slowly wake up. Mrs. Henderson across the street walking her ancient golden retriever. The young couple next door loading their kids into the minivan, always running late, always frantic. And then he'd appear. My husband. The man I'd chosen, who'd chosen me. He'd shuffle out of the bedroom, sleepy-eyed, his hair sticking up in that way that used to make me smile, and he'd wrap his arms around me from behind. His chin would rest on my shoulder, and he'd say the same thing every single morning, without fail, "Good morning, beautiful." Those words used to mean everything. They were our anchor. Our reassurance that despite the mundane routine, despite the bills and the arguments about whose turn it was to take out the trash, we were still us. We were still the couple who'd met at that ridiculous karaoke bar downtown, the ones who'd promised each other forever on a beach in Mexico while a random tourist took photos on my old digital camera. That morning, though, he didn't say it. He walked straight past me like I was furniture. No kiss. No arms around my waist. No sleepy smile. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand with a kind of urgency I'd never seen before, clutched it to his chest like it was precious cargo, and locked himself in the bathroom. I heard the click of the lock echo through the house, and it felt like something else locking too, some door I couldn't see but could definitely feel. Something about it felt off. It was small, wasn't it? Just a flicker in my gut. Like when you're watching a movie and there's that subtle shift in the music that tells you something bad is about to happen. But I noticed. God, did I notice? You see, when you live with someone for over 10 years, when you've memorized the way they breathe in their sleep and the exact order they get dressed in the morning, you start to recognize the tiniest changes. The pause before a sentence that used to flow freely. The new cologne that appeared one day without explanation, "Just wanted to try something different," he'd said with a shrug. The extra 10 minutes in the shower when he used to be in and out in 5. All those things start to whisper something, something you don't want to hear. Something that lives in the back of your mind, growing louder each day, but you keep turning up the volume on everything else in your life to drown it out. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. That was my specialty, wasn't it? Overthinking. Overanalyzing. My mother used to tell me I could find problems in paradise. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was tired, we'd been working long hours, both of us grinding away at careers that demanded more than they gave. Maybe I'd been watching too many drama shows online, letting fictional betrayals bleed into my real life and poison my perspective. But the whisper wouldn't stop. It followed me to work that day. I sat in my cubicle, staring at spreadsheets that might as well have been written in ancient Greek for all the sense they made to my distracted brain. My coworker Sarah asked if I was okay. Apparently, I'd been staring at the same cell for 20 minutes. I laughed it off. Just tired, I said. That phrase was becoming my default response to everything. That day, I left work early. I told my boss I had a headache, which wasn't entirely a lie. My head was pounding with questions I was too afraid to ask out loud. I drove home through streets I'd driven 1,000 times, but everything looked different. Sharper somehow. Like I was seeing the world through new eyes. I was cleaning the living room when I saw it, his phone, left on the couch. Just sitting there. Unlocked. My heart stopped. Actually stopped for a beat before starting again, harder, faster. For years, I'd never even thought of checking his phone. It had never occurred to me. We trusted each other, or maybe I just wanted to believe we did. His phone was his private space, and mine was mine. We'd always respected that boundary, proud of our mature, trusting relationship. We weren't those couples who checked each other's messages. We were better than that. Evolved. But that day, I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was that whisper finally becoming too loud to ignore. Maybe it was the universe pushing me toward a truth I needed to see. My hands were trembling when I picked it up. Actually trembling, like I was handling something dangerous, something that might explode in my hands. My heart was pounding so loud, I could barely hear myself breathe. The living room suddenly felt too hot, too small. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. When had it gotten so loud? I unlocked the screen. His wallpaper was still a photo of us from last summer's vacation. We looked happy. God, we looked so happy. And there it was, right on the home screen. A message notification. A name I didn't recognize. Melissa. My thumb hovered over it for what felt like hours. Part of me wanted to lock the phone, put it back exactly where I found it, and pretend I'd never seen it. Go back to 15M. But I couldn't. I opened the message. Last night was perfect. Can't stop thinking about you. The words blurred. I read them again. And again. As if reading them multiple times would somehow change their meaning. Last night. Last night, he'd told me he was working late. Last night, I'd eaten dinner alone, watched a movie alone, fallen asleep alone. Last night, he'd come home at 11:47 p.m., I remember checking the clock, and slipped into bed without waking me. I'd felt the mattress dip, felt his weight settle beside me, and I'd thought, he's home. He's safe. And I'd fallen back into deeper sleep, secure in the knowledge that we were together. But we weren't together, were we? I felt the world spin. Actually spin, like I was drunk or on a carnival ride. My hands went cold. My whole body went cold, despite the warmth of the September afternoon streaming through our windows. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, scream until my throat was raw, cry until I couldn't cry anymore, break something, anything, to make the outside match the inside. But I didn't. I just froze. Have you ever had a moment where time splits? Where there's a clear before and after? This was mine. In the before, I was a wife. I was a woman who made breakfast and complained about traffic and worried about getting the oil changed in the car. In the after, I didn't know yet. Someone else. Someone who'd just had the floor ripped out from under her. My finger moved almost on its own. Scrolling up. There was more. Of course there was more. Messages. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe. Pictures. Her smile. Her eyes. Her in restaurants I'd never been to. Her in places that looked familiar. Was that the park near our house? Was that the coffee shop where I got my morning latte? A trail of conversations, months old. Months. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a drunken error in judgment. This was sustained. Intentional. This was a choice he made over and over again, every single day, for months. I scrolled through their conversations with a kind of morbid fascination, the way you can't look away from a car accident. Their inside jokes made my stomach turn. Plans for future meetings, Tuesday works, she has that work thing, that's what I was. A work thing. An obstacle to be scheduled around. There were promises. I've never felt this way before. You understand me in a way she never has. This is different. A second life. Complete and full and real. A whole universe I knew nothing about, running parallel to mine, invisibly, for months. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just sex, though God knows that thought made me want to tear my skin off. It was connection. It was emotional intimacy. It was everything we'd built, every inside joke, every shared glance, every quiet moment, shared with someone else. Replaced with someone else. Someone younger, I noticed. Someone without the fine lines around her eyes that I'd started noticing in the mirror. Someone who probably didn't nag him about leaving dishes in the sink or forgetting to call his mother. I don't know how long I sat there. The sun moved across the living room floor, and I didn't move with it. I just sat, phone in hand, reading my marriage's obituary in text message form. When he came home that evening, I couldn't even look at him. I heard his key in the lock, that familiar sound that used to bring me comfort. I heard him call out, "Honey, I'm home," in that cheerful voice. I heard his footsteps coming closer. And I felt nothing. No, that's not true. I felt everything. I felt so much I couldn't feel anything specific. It was like every emotion I'd ever had was screaming at once, creating a kind of white noise in my soul. He walked into the living room, loosening his tie. "Hey, beautiful," he said, bending down to kiss my forehead. His lips on my skin felt like a brand. Like contamination. I pulled away. "Hey," he said, concern creeping into his voice. "You okay?" I wanted to laugh. Was I okay? Was I okay? I'd just discovered my entire life was a lie, and he wanted to know if I was okay? "I'm tired," I said. My voice sounded strange. Flat. Like it was coming from far away. "Long day?" he asked, sitting down beside me on the couch. The couch where his phone had been. The couch where I'd found out. Everything had a before and after now. "Yeah," I said. "Long day." He reached for my hand, and I let him take it. His hand felt foreign. The hand that had held mine at the altar. The hand that had wiped my tears when my father died. The hand that had, apparently, been holding someone else's hand for months. But I wasn't tired. God, I wasn't tired. I was breaking. Quietly. Slowly. Like ice cracking under weight, those little sounds before the whole thing gives way. That night was the longest night of my life. We ate dinner. We watched TV. We went through all the motions of normalcy, and every second felt like acting in a play I'd never auditioned for. He asked about my day. I gave vague answers. He told me about his. I wondered which parts were lies. All of them? Some of them? How do you know what's real when everything could be fake? When we went to bed, he reached for me the way he always did. His arm draping over my waist. His breath on the back of my neck. His body curving around mine like we were two pieces of a puzzle. I lay there, rigid, barely breathing, and waited for him to fall asleep. It didn't take long. It never did. He could sleep through anything. Even this, apparently. Even the destruction of everything we'd built. When his breathing deepened and I knew he was truly asleep, I carefully extracted myself from his embrace. I picked up his phone from the nightstand, no passcode now, he was sleeping. And I sat in the bathroom with the lights off, scrolling through every message. Every photo. Every lie. The bathroom was my sanctuary that night. The cool tile floor. The darkness. The small space where I could finally let my face show what I was feeling without worrying he'd see it. I read conversations from 6 months ago. 7 months. 8. Trying to pinpoint the exact moment when our marriage became a lie. Was it this message? This date? This I miss you? There were messages from days I remembered clearly. Our anniversary, he'd texted her during our anniversary dinner. While I was across from him, celebrating 10 years of marriage, wearing the dress I'd bought special for the occasion, he was texting her under the table. Wish I was with you instead. My birthday. Christmas. The weekend we'd gone to visit his parents. All of it contaminated now. All of it rewritten. At one point, I caught my reflection in the dark screen of the phone when it timed out. My eyes looked older. Different. Like I'd just aged 10 years in one night. Maybe I had. There were tears on my cheeks, but I didn't remember starting to cry. Silent tears, the kind that just leak out without permission. I kept whispering to myself, why? 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 Over and over again, like a prayer, like if I said it enough times the phone would answer me. But the phone never answered. It just showed me more messages. More proof. More pain. The next morning, I made coffee like always. But my hands were shaking so badly I spilled grounds all over the counter. He came out of the bedroom, yawning, oblivious. Morning, beautiful, he said, like nothing had changed. Like the world hadn't ended. And something in me snapped. Don't, I said. He stopped, confused. Don't what? Don't call me that. Call you what? Beautiful? Baby, what's... Who's Melissa? I watched the color drain from his face. It would have been satisfying if I'd had any capacity for satisfaction left. But I didn't. I just felt cold. What, he said. But his eyes said everything. They said guilty. They said caught. They said oh shit. Melissa, I repeated. Who is she? He opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, I said, and my voice cracked. Please. Don't lie to me anymore. He ran his hand through his hair, his tail when he was stressed. It's not what you think. What I think. I laughed, and it sounded unhinged even to my ears. What I think is that you've been having an affair. What I think is that every time you said you were working late, you were with her. What I think is that my entire marriage is a lie. No, he said quickly, stepping toward me. I stepped back. No, baby, it's not like that. It's not an affair. She's just a friend. We're just friends. Friends? I pulled out my phone. I'd taken screenshots. Evidence. Because some part of me knew he'd deny it. These messages don't look like friendship. Last night was perfect? Can't stop thinking about you? I've never felt this way before. You went through my phone? His voice rose, and suddenly he was angry. He was angry. The audacity of it. Don't, I said, my voice shaking. Don't you dare make this about me invading your privacy. You don't get to be the victim here. I'm not trying to be the victim, I just... God, this is... He sat down heavily at the kitchen table, head in his hands. It's not what you think. I swear. Then tell me what it is. We met at a conference. We started talking. It was just emails at first, just work stuff. And then it became more. But we didn't. Didn't what? Didn't sleep together? Is that what you're going to tell me? His silence was answer enough. How long? I asked. It doesn't matter. How long? 6 months, he whispered. Maybe 7. 7 months. More than half a year. More than half a year of coming home to me, kissing me, sleeping beside me, all while living a second life. Do you love her? I asked. I don't know why I asked. I don't know if I wanted to know the answer. I love you, he said, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. I love you. This thing with her, it's not real. It's just an escape. You and me, we've been so busy, so stressed, and she was easy. Uncomplicated. It didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything, I repeated flatly. 7 months didn't mean anything. I mean it meant something but not like us. Not like our marriage. You're my wife. You're my everything. This was just a stupid mistake. A stupid mistake. For 7 months. I know how it sounds. Do you? I asked. Do you really? Because it sounds like you built an entire relationship with someone else while I was here, waiting for you, trusting you, loving you. It sounds like you lied to me every single day for 7 months. It sounds like everything we have is bullshit. It's not bullshit, he said desperately. What we have is real. This is real. I made a mistake, a huge mistake, but I love you. I want us. I want our marriage. You want our marriage? I laughed bitterly. You have a funny way of showing it. I'll end it, he said quickly. Right now. I'll call her right now and end it. I'll block her number. I'll quit my job if I have to. Whatever you need. Please. Please don't give up on us. I looked at him, really looked at him. This man I'd built a life with. This man I'd trusted with every piece of myself. And I didn't recognize him. I need you to leave, I said quietly. What? No. No, we need to talk about this. There's nothing to talk about right now. I need you to leave. Go stay with your brother or get a hotel. I don't care. But I need you to leave. Baby. Now. He flinched. I'd never yelled at him like that before. In 10 years of marriage, we'd argued, sure, but I'd never yelled. Not like that. Not with that kind of rage and pain mixed together. He left. He packed a bag with shaking hands while I sat at the kitchen table, numb. He kept trying to say things, apologies, explanations, promises. I didn't hear any of it. It was just noise. When the door closed behind him, the silence was deafening. I sat there for hours. I called in sick to work. I didn't eat. I didn't move. I just sat in the kitchen where I'd drunk my coffee that morning. Was it only that morning? It felt like years ago. The house felt different. Empty. Even though I was still in it. Maybe especially because I was still in it. The next few days were a blur. He texted constantly. Calls I didn't answer. Messages I didn't read. He sent flowers to my work. My coworkers cooed over them, asking what the occasion was. I threw them in the trash. I told myself I just needed space. Time to think. Time to process. Time to figure out what I wanted. But deep down, I think I already knew. Then came the message that changed everything. I was at work, trying and failing to focus on a report that was due, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Is this Sarah? The message read. My name. How did they have my name? Who is this? I replied. My name is Melissa. I think we need to talk. My blood ran cold. Melissa. The woman. She was contacting me. What do you want? I typed back, my hands shaking. I didn't know, came the response. I swear to God, I didn't know he was married. Not until yesterday. He told me he was divorced. Divorced. He told her he was divorced. Can we meet? She wrote. Please. I need you to know the truth. I need you to know I'm not a homewrecker. I would never, if I'd known. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop across town. Neutral territory. I got there early and sat in the corner, watching the door, my heart racing. She walked in, and I knew her immediately. She looked exactly like her photos. Pretty. Young. Put together. Everything I felt I wasn't anymore. She spotted me and walked over hesitantly. Sarah? I nodded. She sat down across from me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Two women destroyed by the same man. I'm so sorry, she said first, and her eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. Tell me, I said. Tell me everything. And she did. They'd met at a work conference 7 months ago. He'd approached her at the hotel bar. They'd talked for hours. He was charming, funny, attentive. He'd told her he was divorced. That he'd been single for 2 years. That he was finally ready to start dating again. She'd believed him. Why wouldn't she? He was convincing. He'd even shown her his apartment, his brother's apartment, I realized now. The one he told me he was crashing at while working on our marriage. They'd been dating. Actually dating. Dinners. Movies. Weekend getaways to hotels I'd never heard of. He'd built an entire fake life for her. A life where he was available, single, hers. He never wore a ring, she said. I looked. I checked. There was no ring. Because he'd stopped wearing his wedding ring months ago. He'd told me it was getting tight, that he needed to get it resized. Another lie in an ocean of lies. She pulled out her phone and started showing me screenshots. Messages between them. Messages where he called her baby, sweetheart, love. The same words he used with me. He told me he loved me, she said, her voice breaking. Last week. He said he loved me and wanted a future with me. He said what? I felt like I'd been punched. He said he wanted to introduce me to his family. That he wanted me to move in with him. That he was ready for something serious. While telling me he wanted to save our marriage. While begging me not to give up on us. She pushed her phone across the table. I need you to see this. I need you to know I didn't know. I scrolled through her screenshots, each one a knife to the chest. They told a story, a complete story of a relationship that ran parallel to ours. He'd told her about his difficult divorce, his controlling ex-wife, me, presumably, his hopes for the future. There were messages from our anniversary. While he was at dinner with me, he was texting her, one more business dinner and then I'm free. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Business dinner. That's what our anniversary was to him. A business dinner. When did you find out? I asked. Yesterday. I got suspicious. He's been weird lately, distant. So I did something crazy. I looked up his address online. Public records. And I drove by his house. Your house. And I saw a woman's car in the driveway. I saw you through the window. You saw me? You were in the kitchen. Making dinner, I think. And I realized he wasn't divorced. He was married. He'd been married the whole time. We sat there in silence for a moment. I ended it, she said. Yesterday. I called him and told him I knew. I told him I never wanted to see him again. And then I found you on Facebook. I know I shouldn't have reached out, but I needed you to know. I needed you to know it wasn't just some fling. He built a whole relationship with me. He made promises. He lied to both of us. Thank you, I said, and I meant it. Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. But at least now I know the whole truth. She nodded. I'm so sorry. For everything. You didn't deserve this. Neither did you. We parted ways after that. Two women bound together by betrayal, probably never to see each other again. I drove home in a daze. That was the moment the illusion shattered completely. Not when I found the messages. Not when I confronted him. But when I sat across from her and saw the full scope of his lies. People talk about heartbreak like it's one big explosion, a dramatic ending. They talk about the moment you find out, the confrontation, the tears. But it's not like that. Not really. It's slow. Like watching your house burn down in silence, one room at a time. You watch the living room go. Then the bedroom. Then the kitchen. Room by room, memory by memory, everything you built turning to ash. And you can't even scream because your voice is gone. You can't cry because you've run out of tears. You just watch it burn. I didn't scream when I got home. I didn't cry. I just felt empty. Hollowed out. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left just the shell. He tried to fix it, of course. When I finally agreed to see him again, he came with apologies. With flowers, always with flowers, as if flowers could fix this. With promises that it was over, that he'd changed, that he'd do anything to make this right. I'll go to therapy, he said. We'll go to therapy. I'll be an open book. You can check my phone whenever you want. I'll rebuild your trust, I promise. And part of me, God help me, part of me, wanted to believe him. Because it's easier, isn't it? It's easier to believe and try to fix it than to burn it all down and start over. So we went to therapy. We sat in an office with beige walls and uncomfortable chairs while a woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice asked us to talk about our feelings. He talked about stress. About how the pressure at work had been overwhelming. About how we'd drifted apart. About how he'd made a series of poor choices, that's how he phrased it, poor choices, like he'd eaten too much cake or stayed up too late, not destroyed our marriage. He said the right things. He cried at the right moments. He held my hand and looked into my eyes and promised he'd never hurt me again. And I tried. God, I tried. I tried to forgive. I tried to move forward. I tried to rebuild the trust. But every word felt hollow. Every promise felt like it was written in sand, waiting for the next wave to wash it away. Trust isn't a light switch, you know? You can't just flip it back on because someone says sorry. It's more like a bone that's been broken. Even after it heals, it's never quite the same. You can feel where the break was. You protect it. You're always aware of its weakness. Once it's gone, you can't just manufacture it again through sheer will. Months passed. We said the right things in therapy. We communicated and worked on our issues. We went on date nights that felt like job interviews. We had sex that felt like performing a duty. I'd watch him across the dinner table and wonder if he was thinking about her. I'd feel him reach for me in bed and wonder if he wished I was someone else. Every time his phone buzzed, my stomach would clench. Every time he said he had to work late, I'd feel sick. Every time he was quiet, I'd wonder what he was hiding. I couldn't unsee those messages. They were burned into me, like scars you can't touch but always feel. Every time I looked at him, I saw them. Every anniversary, every birthday, every ordinary Tuesday, they were all contaminated now by the knowledge of what he'd been doing, who he'd been with, what he'd been saying to someone else. I started having dreams. Nightmares, really. In them, I'd find more messages. More women. More lies. I'd wake up in cold sweats, reaching for his phone to check, hating myself for being that person but unable to stop. One night, about 6 months after everything had blown up, I sat alone in the kitchen. It was late. He was asleep in the bedroom. We were back in the same bed by then, though I always made sure to stay on my side, careful not to touch him in my sleep. I was staring at his phone again. He'd given me the passcode. Full transparency, he'd called it. Like transparency could fix the past. I scrolled through his messages. They were clean. Too clean. Suspiciously clean. He'd delete everything now. Every conversation. Every text. To help you feel more comfortable, he'd said. But the cleaning made it worse somehow. Because now I couldn't trust the absence of messages any more than I'd trusted their presence. I thought about deleting everything, all our photos together, all our memories, all the evidence of what we'd been. Starting fresh. Pretending the past decade hadn't happened. Pretending I could be the person I was before I found those messages. But then, I realized something. Sitting there in the dark kitchen, my coffee long gone cold, his phone glowing in my hand like a cursed object. Those messages didn't just destroy me. They woke me up. They forced me to see things I'd been avoiding for years. How small I'd made myself to keep our marriage alive. How I'd stopped asking for what I needed because it was easier not to rock the boat. How I'd accepted crumbs and called it love. When had I stopped pursuing my own dreams? I used to paint. Used to spend weekends at galleries, brush in hand, lost in color and form. When did I stop? Gradually, I realized. Gradually, over years of we can't afford and maybe next year and don't you think you should focus on something more practical? When had I stopped seeing my friends? Sarah from college, who used to be my best friend, when was the last time we'd done more than exchange quick texts? 3 years? 4? He'd never liked her. She's a bad influence, he'd said. And slowly, I'd let her drift away rather than argue about it. When had I stopped taking care of myself? I looked in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. When had these dark circles become permanent? When had my smile become something I had to remember to do? I'd spent 10 years molding myself into the perfect wife. The understanding wife. The supportive wife. The wife who didn't ask too many questions or make too many demands. The wife who forgave and forgot and made things easy. And where had it gotten me? It wasn't just his betrayal. It was my silence. My fear of being alone. My terror of starting over. I'd stayed small because small felt safe. I'd accepted less because less was familiar. But I wasn't safe. I'd never been safe. I'd just been comfortable in my cage. That realization hit me like a physical force. I actually gasped, there in the dark kitchen, as if I'd been holding my breath for years and finally remembered how to breathe. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't spend the rest of my life trying to fix something that might have been broken long before those messages. I couldn't keep shrinking myself to fit into a marriage that didn't fit me anymore. So, one morning, it was a Saturday, I remember because he'd made pancakes, trying so hard to be the husband he'd promised to be, I packed a suitcase. I did it while he was in the shower. I moved quickly, efficiently. My clothes. My toiletries. My journal. The one I'd been writing in since I was 16, the one that held every dream and fear and hope I'd ever had. I looked around our bedroom, our home, and felt nothing. No sadness. No regret. Just a kind of quiet certainty. I didn't write a note. What would I say? Everything that needed to be said had been said. Or maybe nothing that needed to be said could be said in a note. I didn't take much, just my clothes, my journal, and my dignity. That last one felt the most important. I was taking back the piece of myself I'd left behind. When he came out of the shower, his hair wet, a towel around his waist, calling out pancakes are ready. I was gone. I drove to a hotel first. Then I found a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom. Hardwood floors. A tiny kitchen. A window that looked out over a park. It wasn't much. But it was mine. My phone blew up, of course. Calls from him. Texts. Voicemails that ranged from confused to angry to pleading. I listened to one. Just one. Baby, please. Come home. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. We can fix this. We can fix anything. Please just come home and talk to me. I love you. I love you so much. Please. But that was the thing. He loved me. Maybe he did. But love isn't enough, is it? Love without trust is just pretty words. Love without respect is just chains. And I'd been wearing those chains for so long I'd forgotten what freedom felt like. I didn't respond to his messages. I didn't call back. I let my silence speak for me. The first night in my new apartment was the hardest. I sat on the floor. I didn't have furniture yet, just a sleeping bag and a pillow, and I let myself fall apart. Really fall apart. Not the quiet, controlled crying I'd been doing for months, but the ugly, gasping, soul-deep sobbing that comes from a place so deep you didn't know it existed. I cried for the girl I'd been at 23, so full of hope, saying I do on that beach in Mexico. I cried for all the years I'd wasted trying to be enough for someone who would never think I was. I cried for the future I'd imagined, growing old together, grandchildren, rocking chairs on a porch somewhere, that would never happen now. But mostly, I cried because I was terrified. Absolutely terrified. I was 35 years old, starting over from scratch. I didn't know how to be alone. I'd gone from my parents' house to college to living with him. I'd never lived by myself. Not once in my entire adult life. Who was I without him? Without us? I'd been a wife for so long I didn't know how to just be me. That fear was paralyzing. For the first few weeks, I barely left the apartment except for work. I'd come home, order takeout, and sit on my air mattress. I'd finally bought one, watching mindless TV until I fell asleep. My coworkers noticed something was different. "You okay?" Sarah from accounting kept asking. I'd give her vague answers. Just some personal stuff. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Saying it out loud would make it real. He kept trying to reach me. He sent letters to my workplace. He showed up at my apartment building once. I saw him from the window and didn't answer the buzzer. He stood there for an hour, calling my phone over and over, before finally leaving. My mother called. He'd contacted her, told her some version of events that painted me as the one who'd given up, who'd refused to work on our marriage. "He says you won't even talk to him," she said, disapproval thick in her voice. "Marriage is work, Sarah. You can't just run away when things get hard." I almost told her everything. Almost described every message, every lie, every moment of betrayal. But I didn't. "It's complicated, Mom," was all I said. "Well, uncomplicate it," she replied. "He's your husband. For better or worse, remember. For better or worse." Those words echoed in my head for days. At what point does worse become too much? At what point are you allowed to say, "I've had enough"? I started seeing a therapist. A different one, just for me. Her name was Dr. Martinez, and she had this way of asking questions that made you see things you'd been avoiding. "Why do you think you stayed as long as you did?" she asked during one of our sessions. "I loved him," I said automatically. And I don't know. I thought we could fix it. I thought if I just tried hard enough. "What were you afraid would happen if you left?" That question broke something open in me. I was afraid I'd be alone forever. That no one else would want me. That I'd made the wrong choice and would regret it for the rest of my life. And now? Now. I paused, really thinking about it. Now I'm more afraid of staying in something that was killing me slowly. Dr. Martinez smiled. "That's progress. Progress." It felt like such a small word for such a massive shift. Slowly, so slowly I barely noticed at first, things started to change. I bought furniture for my apartment. Nothing fancy, mostly thrift store finds and IKEA pieces. I assembled myself at 2 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. But they were mine. I'd chosen them. Not us. Me. I started painting again. I'd been driving home from work one day and passed an art supply store. On impulse, I pulled over. I spent $200 I probably shouldn't have spent on brushes and canvases and paint. That night, I painted until my back hurt and my fingers cramped. I painted abstract shapes in angry reds and deep blues. I painted my rage and my sadness and my fear and my hope all tangled together on canvas. It was terrible. Objectively terrible. But it was mine. I called Sarah. My old friend from college. The one I'd let drift away. She picked up on the second ring. Sarah? Oh my God, Sarah? Is that really you? Hey, I said, my voice shaking. I know it's been forever, but do you maybe want to get coffee? We met the next day. I told her everything. Every sordid detail. She listened without interrupting, her hand covering mine across the table, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, she said when I finished. I wish I'd known. I wish I'd been there for you. You're here now, I said. That's what matters. We started having weekly coffee dates. Then wine nights. Then weekend brunches. She introduced me to her girlfriend, Emma, who welcomed me into their circle like I'd always been there. Slowly, I started building a life that was mine. I started taking yoga classes on Saturday mornings. I joined a book club at the local library. I said yes to a work friend's invitation to go dancing, something I hadn't done in years because he'd always said he didn't like clubs. And you know what? I loved dancing. I loved the feeling of losing myself in music, of moving without thinking, of being just a body in a crowd of bodies with no past and no future, just the present moment. There were hard days, of course. Days when I'd see a couple holding hands and feel a pang of loneliness so sharp it took my breath away. Days when I'd cook dinner for one and feel the emptiness of my apartment like a physical presence. Days when I'd reach for my phone to text him about something funny I'd seen, forgetting for just a moment that we weren't us anymore. But there were good days too. More and more of them. Like the day I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about him at all the day before. Or the day I laughed, really laughed, from my belly, at something Sarah said and realized it had been years since I'd laughed like that. Or the day I looked in the mirror and actually liked what I saw. Not because I'd lost weight or changed my hair or anything external. But because the woman looking back at me had life in her eyes again. The divorce paperwork came 6 months after I left. He'd finally accepted that I wasn't coming back. There was a note attached, "I'll always love you. I'm sorry I couldn't be the man you deserved." I read it once, then put it away. Maybe it was true. Maybe he did love me. Maybe he was sorry. But it didn't change anything. It didn't undo the betrayal or rebuild the trust or give me back the years I'd spent shrinking myself to fit into his life. I signed the papers without crying. That felt like progress too. It's been 2 years since that day. 2 years since I packed my suitcase and walked out of the life I'd built. I live in a small apartment now, a different one, bigger, nicer. I finally bought real furniture. There's art on the walls, some of it mine, some from local artists I've met at gallery openings. There are books everywhere, stacked on tables and shelves, the kind I like, not the kind we used to compromise on. I have plants now, so many plants. Succulents on the windowsill, a fiddle leaf fig in the corner, herbs growing in the kitchen. I'm responsible for keeping them alive, and somehow, I'm doing it. They're thriving. Maybe I am too. I drink my coffee in peace every morning. I sit in my favorite chair, a worn armchair I found at an estate sale, butter-soft leather that smells like old books, and I watch the sunrise through my window. Sometimes I plan my day. Sometimes I just sit and exist, and that's enough. My job is the same, but I'm different at it. I speak up in meetings now. I asked for a raise last year and got it. I stopped making myself small in professional spaces the way I'd made myself small in personal ones. I'm dating again. Nothing serious yet, I'm not sure I'm ready for serious. But I've been on dates. Coffee. Dinner. A movie. One guy even took me rock climbing, which terrified me and exhilarated me in equal measure. None of them have been him. None of them have made me feel what I felt in those early days, when everything was new and possible and perfect. But maybe that's okay. Maybe perfect isn't what I'm looking for anymore. Maybe I'm looking for real. For honest. For someone who sees me and doesn't need me to be smaller to make room for them. Or maybe I'm looking for nothing at all except my own company. And that's okay too. Sometimes, I still hear that whisper, the one that started everything. The one that told me something was wrong that Tuesday morning 2 years ago. But now, it doesn't scare me. It reminds me that I can trust my instincts. That when something feels off, it probably is. That I don't need proof or permission to listen to my gut. I ran into him once, about 6 months ago. At a grocery store of all places. He was in the produce section, examining avocados with the same intense concentration he'd always had. Like choosing an avocado was a matter of life and death. For a moment, I considered turning around, hiding in another aisle until he left. But I didn't. I walked right past him, my head high. He saw me. Our eyes met. There was a whole conversation in that look, regret, longing, sadness, acceptance. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," I replied. "You look good." "Happy." "I am," I said. And I meant it. "I'm glad." He paused. "I really am. You deserve to be happy." "So do you," I said, because it was true. Despite everything, I didn't wish him unhappiness. I just wished him out of my life. We stood there for another moment, two people who used to know everything about each other and now knew nothing. "Take care of yourself," he said finally. "You too." And then I walked away. I bought my groceries. I drove home. I made dinner in my small kitchen with a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Because that's the thing about healing. It's not linear. It's not neat. It doesn't happen all at once in some grand, dramatic moment. It happens in tiny increments. In small, quiet victories. In moments when you realize the thing that used to hurt doesn't hurt quite as much anymore. I still keep one of his old messages. I transferred it to my new phone, backed it up in the cloud. The first one he ever sent me, back when we'd just started dating. "Can't wait to see you again. It's from another lifetime. From when I was a different person who believed different things about love and trust and forever. I don't keep it because I miss him. God, I don't miss him. I don't miss the walking on eggshells, the constant anxiety, the making myself smaller, the lying to myself that everything was fine. I keep it because it reminds me of how blind love can make us. How we can see exactly what we want to see and ignore every red flag waving in our faces. How we can lose ourselves so completely in another person that we forget we're supposed to exist too. But mostly, I keep it because it reminds me how powerful it is when we finally open our eyes. Because here's what I've learned, betrayal doesn't just destroy. If you let it, if you survive it, it can also illuminate. It can show you truths you've been avoiding. It can force you to question everything you thought you knew. It can break you open and let the light in. I'm not grateful for what he did. I'm not one of those people who looks back and says it was all part of the journey or everything happens for a reason. Fuck that. What he did was wrong. It hurt. It left scars. But I am grateful for who I've become because of it. For the woman who learned to trust herself again. For the woman who learned that she could survive the thing she feared most. For the woman who learned that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. I'm grateful for my small apartment with its thrift store furniture and too many plants. For my Saturday morning yoga classes and my Wednesday night book club. For Sarah and Emma and the new friends I've made. For the painting I do late at night when I can't sleep, getting lost in color and form the way I used to. I'm grateful for the mornings I wake up and the first thing I feel isn't anxiety about what mood he'll be in or what I might have done wrong. For the nights I go to bed without checking anyone's phone or wondering where they really are. I'm grateful for the peace. The boring, ordinary, beautiful piece of a life that's fully mine. Last week, I went on a date with someone new. His name is Marcus. He's a teacher, 8th grade English. He has kind eyes and a laugh that makes you want to laugh too. He asked about my art, really asked, and listened to my answer like it mattered. At the end of the date, he walked me to my car. I had a really nice time, he said. Can I see you again? Maybe, I said, and I meant it. Not yes, not no, just maybe. Because I'm not rushing into anything. I'm not trying to fill a void or prove something to myself or anyone else. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'll be okay. Because I know now that I'm okay on my own. He smiled. I'll take maybe. As I drove home that night, windows down, music playing, I thought about that Tuesday morning 2 years ago. About the woman I was then, so scared, so small, so trapped in a life that was killing her slowly. If I could go back and tell her something, I think I'd say this: it's going to hurt. God, it's going to hurt so much you'll think you can't survive it. But you will. You'll survive it and come out the other side stronger and truer and more yourself than you've ever been. The betrayal won't define you. It'll refine you. It'll burn away everything that wasn't really you and leave behind the pure, essential truth of who you are. And that person? She's pretty amazing. I pulled into my parking spot, turned off the car, and sat for a moment in the quiet. Through my apartment window, I could see the soft glow of the lamp I'd left on. My lamp in my apartment, in my life. I grabbed my bag, locked the car, and headed inside. As I climbed the stairs, I passed Mrs. Chen from 3B, who was taking her garbage out. "Evening, Sarah," she called. "Evening, Mrs. Chen. You look happy, dear." "I am," I said. And this time, when I smiled, it reached all the way to my eyes. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, changed into comfortable clothes, and made myself a cup of tea. I settled into my armchair with a book I'd been meaning to read, one of those novels everyone raves about but you never quite get around to. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus: "Thanks for tonight. Sweet dreams." I smiled. "You too," I typed back. Then I set my phone aside face down, on silent, and opened my book. Because here's what I know now: the messages, the betrayal, the heartbreak, they were just the beginning. Not the end. The end was up to me. And I chose this. This quiet life. This small apartment. This peace. I chose me. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm painting or reading or just sitting in my chair watching the city lights, I whisper a thank you to that whisper that started everything. That gut feeling that refused to be ignored. Because it saved my life. Not from him. From myself. From a life half-lived. From a love that asked me to be less than I was. The whisper woke me up. And yeah, waking up hurt like hell. But now I'm alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. Now I'm free. And that's everything.